You know that feeling when you design something in Figma and it looks great? The spacing is tight, typography is balanced, the happy part looks amazing, and then you hand off. And a week later, you get a build from engineering and it's just slightly off. The animation is clunky, the loading state just the layout. Technically, it works. However, the soul of the product is completely gone. You see, for the first few years in my career, the gap drove me crazy. I thought the problem was communication. I thought I just needed to write better documentation or have more meetings. But no, the problem wasn't communication. The problem was the process itself. I realized that in most startup environments, the line between design and engineering is the friction. And I call this friction translation tax. Stay with me for a moment. Think about it. When a designer imagines an interaction, they have to translate that feeling into a static picture. And then you have to explain that picture to a developer. And then the developer has to translate that explanation into logic. At every step of this process, you lose fidelity and you lose time. In the startup environment, speed is everything. And if you have to wait for a meeting to move a button 5 pixels left, or you have to write a ticket to change an animation curve, you aren't really shipping. What you're doing is negotiating. I have functioned in multiple hybrid roles as a UX designer or software engineer, and sometimes both. See, the title doesn't really matter here. What matters is the philosophy behind it. I don't write code because I love syntax. I write code because I love control. I want to control the quality of the interaction from database all the way to the pixels. And when you learn how to do both, you stop designing for happy parts, which never happens, by the way, and you start building for the reality of how users consumes data. You stop guessing if an animation is feasible on React and you just prototype it in the browser to see if it feels right. That friction completely disappears and the translation tax goes to zero. If you work in big tech, this might be an exception. But if you are working with startups or you are building your own product, this is a force multiplier. Just the ability to take a project from an idea all the way to production deployment is a superpower on its own. And at the end of the day, users do not care about your Figma file, neither do they care about your clean code. They care about the experience right on their screen. So if you're a designer contemplating on learning how to code or a developer trying to understand the fundamentals of UX design, I would say go for it. The moment you learn how to bridge the gap by understanding how to translate design to engineering and vice versa, your value goes way up. I trust you learned something new today. And by the way, I'm Victor.